Welcome to SomPrana. I'm Sarah. I'm an EFT practitioner.
And I am Dr. Aarti Soorya. I'm an integrative medicine physician.
Today, we're going to talk about one of the big reasons you might be struggling to move towards a more adaptable nervous system or a more regulated nervous system. You might already be doing all of the breath work. You might be doing yoga. You might be taking supplements. You might be doing all the right diet, lifestyle things, and still feel like you are dysregulated often or still be struggling with symptoms and not understand why when you're doing everything right. Now, you and I both have experience with this, right?
Mhm. And I think that's why we're so passionate about teaching it.
Yeah. And we both have clients who struggled with this and that
Yeah,
we want to move through this. Um, I want to hear a little bit more about how you've struggled with it. I know some of your story, but I'd love to hear more.
sure. Yeah. I was always someone who thought I could handle stress because I was always able to push through stress. So that's in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm so strong. I can handle stuff. No big deal. It is the typical personality that can go through medical school, residency. I did functional medicine training after that while I was working. So I was like used to kind of like juggling 20,000 things at once, and not really having any kind of time for myself for like reflection, just because that wasn't something that was like built into my like life at all, right? It was just kind of like go, go, go. And it was always very goal oriented. And so, I pushed through, and then finally I moved after I was done with residency. I moved to Chicago. I took a job that I didn't like. I knew I wasn't going to like it. So already I'm not in alignment with what I like and don't like. Then I was doing that job while I was, doing my functional medicine training. And, it wasn't anything big, but it was more like, I think that in my system, not doing something I liked at that point was really like tipped me over the edge. And I went into fight or flight, and I stayed there, and I stopped sleeping. I mean, when you stop sleeping, your mood tanks, your energy tanks. I didn't want to connect. I just was always kind of just making it through the day. Like I could push through because when your cortisol is high, you can push through, but like I just felt like complete crap. And so, I was doing my functional medicine training at that time, and I was like, oh, great, I'll know how to fix myself, I'm doing the training. And, I didn't really get the answers that I was looking for. But, then at that point, I was ready to kind of move on into the integrative medicine world, joined a clinic. And again, I was like, oh, great, I'll learn how to do this and apply it and all this stuff. And I was a practitioner, so I got access to all these testing kits, for free, so that I could learn how to use them and teach patients about them. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have paid to do all of that testing. And what I found was like, oh, rather than being very empowering, I felt like, oh my gosh, there's so much wrong with me, wrong with what's going on in my physiology. How do I fix it? And I did certain supplements like adaptogens and stuff that were very helpful. And I, did yoga and breathing and all of that. And that did help. It really did help. But I was working really hard to stay afloat, and it was kind of the same mentality, the go, 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 like, okay, tell me what to do and I'll do it and that will fix me. So I use the same kind of mentality with yoga, like, great, I know this is good for me. So I'm going to do it and it'll fix the problem and I'll be golden. And I realized like I was still struggling with stuff. Like I was still so fatigued. I was still so didn't want to connect with friends and stuff. And it wasn't until I really delved into the nervous system work that I realized like, oh, I'm not actually adaptable. And I've been using these tools all wrong. They're all good. All the tools are good. It was just how I realized how I was using them was more as like a drug rather than something to nourish me. So that's kind of my story in a nutshell. But I know you've kind of also struggled with similar stuff, and love to hear how it played out for you.
I know we both kind of ran into each other towards like the end of our,
Yes. We
working.
both met at a functional medicine clinic.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we both at then really believed that would help, but found the nervous system just
Was
over
really key.
was really where the work was. For me, I really got into, and I didn't know it was the nervous system, but I really got into how emotions impacted you by just when I became a parent. Is I was reading all the things and I wanted to be a really good parent. And I was really aware then of these things that I had stuck, these triggers and these things. And I saw how that would show up for me, but I didn't really tie it as much to my own health for a while. It took me a bit, like I could see it sometimes with other people. And I was struggling with some stuff because I was always trying to be perfect and being the perfect parent. And really, it was kind of a fight or flight.
Perfection is really
Yeah,
bad, right? Is really a
but
fight or flight. Yeah,
suppressing emotions, and I wasn't actually learning how to not suppress those emotions, but also not react to my kids.
right.
So then I was having these physical symptoms that I didn't have prior to kids, like digestive stuff, hormone stuff. And I didn't understand when I was like, I started naturopath school and I worked at a functional medicine office, and it was just like doing all the right things. Why do I still feel like anxious and like my digestion? It just takes one thing to tip it off. Um,
Hmm.
but I found it was really these unsuppressed emotions, right? And you and I kind of found this around the same time. Um,
Yeah,
that and how it shows up in the nervous system because we have these suppressed emotions. And when I started to give more space to my emotions and work through it, I started to see a shift rather than me just trying to constantly problem solve, like, oh, why am I feeling annoyed? I shouldn't feel annoyed. Let me do some breath work and try to get myself not to feel this way. Like, I don't
right.
want
Yeah,
it was very fight or flight. It was very like, I don't want to feel how I'm feeling. So I was using breath work and I was using all these tools, but the way I was using them was actually worse for my nervous system. Is I was using them to not help me with the emotion, is to like make the emotion go away. Like just
right. Yeah. And that's, I think, the biggest point, right? We are human beings. Like part of being a human being is learning and understanding all and expressing these emotions, right? And we are just really culturally taught to suppress them.
yes. And until we accept them. So this is the big thing we're wanted to talk about is
Yeah.
acceptance is actually the key to moving forward. Now, I know that sounds weird, as I had to accept that I was angry first and that this thing made me angry and not try to move through it, push through it right away, and kind of get to the root of that and allow myself to be angry before my triggers got less with my kids or, and then my physical symptoms got better. But I had to accept it first, right?
Absolutely. And like, I think in the holistic world, sometimes there can be this sometimes over emphasis on therapizing it and talking about the anger, like, for years and years and years. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, we really want you to feel it and work through that sensation in the body. And that was like, I mean, it's the body's brilliance, actually. These emotions were there to help protect us. And anger, it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. We've just made it so quote unquote negative, but anger is a healthy emotion. It was a protective emotion. And so learning how to feel it is good.
Yeah, and you and I both had to learn, I mean, somatic practices help. We had to basically the base of it was feel it in your body and get comfortable with it.
Mhm.
Anger,
Yeah.
be okay with it and don't quickly try to do some type of thing to problem solve out of it is what we had to learn. And this acceptance,
Yeah.
angry, and it's okay, I'm angry. And at the same time, it doesn't mean something is wrong I have to fix right away,
Right.
is where I had to shift to. Because then for a bit, what I moved to was I'm angry and I'm going to sit with it. But then you can shift to, well, I'm angry because of this and this and this and this. And it's these things. I all have to fix these things. Now I'm trying to fix all these things outside of me. And it was like, no, I just need to sit with this anger. And when I'm regulated later, I can see if there's something I have to fix or if it's just an old trigger or if it's just,
Right.
sometimes things annoy us and we're allowed to be angry.
And that's okay. Like the goal is not to be Zen, right? That's not the goal at all. That's like you know, I think a misconception, I think, about doing any somatic practice that, oh, I'll be Zen all the time. That's not the issue. The goal is to feel it, be in the moment with it, and then it goes away rather than it like circulating in your system and eating you up and constantly being there way longer than had you just sat with it.
Yes, the rumination too.
Yeah.
Rumination is also not accepting it. So when we are talking sitting with it, is we're not saying staying with it forever, not sitting there
Right.
for and just living in it, like you said. It's just like keeping it in your system. So it's like it's okay, it's here. It makes sense, it's here, but also there's nothing I need to do. And then trying, eventually sometimes I had to learn to like redivert my attention to a bird out the window and
Mhm.
like I sat with it for a little bit and then it's okay to move on.
Right. Yeah. And this is, I think, something that we love teaching about, and with our own experience, I think people can see themselves in our stories a bit. Because I definitely, for a while was using somatic stuff. Like, yes, it was helpful, but still to fix stuff, right? And that's not the point of it. And that's not the point of like yoga or breathing or whatever. These are just training grounds for actual life circumstances, right? Because there is stress in life, and of course stress makes us stronger. Stress is not bad. And this is all about training yourself to be an adaptable human being, which is exciting because then your physiology follows and then your symptoms go away.
Yes. Yeah. And you and I both have done a lot of work with trying to figure this out, but we
Yeah.
found kind of where we felt was right because we saw that with clients, we were training them to be able to sit with it, right? As we were regulating them while they were angry, not so much making their anger go away, not so much let's shove this somatic practice at them to get rid of their anger. It was really with a safe person, with a somatic practitioner, I can feel angry and I can process through the anger and nothing horrible happens.
Right. And the beauty of this is you're building safety into your system, and that's when we repair, and that's where the symptoms start to go away. So it's
We talked a little bit earlier about how when you when you are feeling angry or when you're feeling this way and you're sitting with it, there's things that might keep you from wanting to feel it or frustrations. And we were talking a little bit about processing that.
Mhm.
Um, one of the big things we talked about was like sitting with the feeling of I want to fix it. And you learned this too with wanting to fix it. What did that look like for you? Like sitting
That's a
with,
great question. Yeah, before I would say it was like, okay, I got to do my breath work and I got to do my yoga so then I can stay, fine throughout the day and I'll be able to sleep at night. Now it's more like I feel what I'm feeling. Like I usually, if I'm angry or something, heart rate's a little bit higher and I will sit with it. I'll sometimes do tapping, or sometimes I'll just be tapping on my heart just to give a little bit of different proprioceptive input. But it's just like this rhythmic pattern brings a little bit of safety, and I'll just talk it out. I'll just say what's bothering me. This is like what happened. And just literally, no one's there. I'm just talking it out to myself. And I'll tap it out and just keep going through it until I feel myself shift a little bit. Or, sometimes I'll just like run in place for a little bit just to get that excess cortisol going and then talk it out. Like there's no one right way that I do it. I just kind of just feel into what does my body want to do. And then I follow that. And then I just tend to then bring myself down through time, not forcing it.
oh, I like that. I like that a
Yeah.
lot.
Yeah. What do you do?
I mean, the same, it shifts for me. So
Yeah.
sometimes it's I go for a walk and I look around while thinking about what happened and because that like walk gives me that outlet.
Movement. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh. Looking around while I'm processing or thinking about the thing that really upset me, or I go outside or like, I just try to give space to. I use tapping a lot. Obviously, I'm a tapping practitioner.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I usually use tapping to rant in that moment. To
Really
like,
great for it. It is amazing for it.
it does. And it also, the rant with tapping, it doesn't like feed into the cycle. It lets me feel it while also not like amping me up more. It's just
Right.
like, I am feeling this. This is how I'm feeling. And then I'm able to move on with my day. Right.
Yeah.
So this is usually for big emotions. Now, if it's like I'm a little annoyed, I just allow myself to feel it briefly. And then like sometimes I like look out a window at a bird or something because, I have kids and sometimes they do things that you're like, okay.
That is where the breathing might be helpful, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
But I think like, yeah, I mean, for those of you who are not familiar with tapping, like it is science backed and it's pretty impressive, the science with it. So it can look funky, but I'm pretty impressed with how well it helps bring that survival brain down. So, we are really wired for safety and threat. And I think us as human beings, we forget that because we live in such a modern culture that, we don't have tigers anymore that we're running away from, but we are pretty stimulated all the time. And this is a beautiful way to for you to become your own medicine, right? And gain autonomy over your own physiology.
Yeah, that's
So
what I love it is we work together on big things with people that I work with one-on-one. Then I give them it and they can use it on their own time. It's not like something they have to have me for. So it doesn't create this like codependency with me that they can use it. And I'm really giving them tools to work through the big things that they're really struggling with, which is great.
what do you do with someone who might be kind of scared to even try anything, or like maybe they've had some big trauma in the past and they're like, oh gosh, I know that's kind of one thing that's probably keeping my system from healing,
Mhm.
but I'm way too scared to even open up that.
Yeah. So each person's different. And we usually start with something like I like to think of a big trauma as like a tree with branches, right? Usually just start with like a limb of the tree.
Yeah.
Not going after the big trauma, we go after something like that probably stemmed from the trauma and is like we're cutting down limbs basically. Like I had a client that they were like, I'm really afraid if we go after my trauma, X, Y, and Z is going to happen, or it's going to open this floodgate. I'm going to get overwhelmed. So we went after that feeling. We went after the fear that if I open up my feelings, I'm going to get overwhelmed. And then we went and we sat with that feeling. And honestly, they brought tears and this helped to start to move through that fear. And eventually, if they feel ready, then we go after the trauma, but we kind of go after the limbs, I'd like to say first before we ever would sit with the trauma, or we don't even have to like,
I think this is the beauty of this work, is that you don't even have to talk about the trauma. It's
Mhm.
literally, what is the system feeling? So if that's more clarity for some people, is like, that's really what somatic work is about, because sometimes you may not even know what happened.
No, and we just sit with the feelings and the things that are showing up today and how it feels and where they're feeling something in their body and
Mhm.
sitting with it and allowing it.
Yeah, I think this was something that I struggled with because I was very conditioned not to feel, which helps with the robot, push through medical school, residency, blah, 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 etc. Until you can't, right? So I see a lot of patients who are similar personalities where it was like, well, I can handle stress. And I'm like, well, do you have symptoms? They're like, yeah. So I'm like, okay, so we have some work to build an adaptable nervous system then.
Yeah, that makes sense because you have to learn to feel again. And you had to learn that. I know we talked a little bit, is allowing
Mhm.
things to happen. Where
Yeah.
I had where I could feel, but I didn't know what to do with it.
Okay, yeah.
Like something would annoy me and I would, try to ignore it and then maybe eventually be like, oh, I'm so the, the fiery redhead thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I would be really annoyed, especially when I was younger, and then I'd get angry. Um, and I had to learn how not to just like feel it and just like try to shove it to the side to feel it and that it's okay, it's there, and how like build safety around feeling basically.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's amazing to see this work with whoever we work with. It's been a really nice, beautiful journey, and also to see like our own evolution as practitioners, kind of entering into the holistic world, the functional medicine world, and then evolving into this nervous system work. So it's been really nice to see um, our own transformations, and patients that we work with, their transformations. So
Yeah, it's been wonderful.